Hi there, welcome to chapter 18, which is weight management. So the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC as we refer to them, they've classified the American society as obesogenic due to the environmental factors that promote excessive intake of unhealthy, high-calorie foods coupled with physical inactivity. This combination has really resulted into a culture primed to make its citizens gain fat. The number of overweight and obese Americans has gradually increased over the past 20 years. For adults aged 20 years and older, approximately 69% are overweight or obese, and 35% of these adults are classified as obese. A person is considered overweight if they weigh more than expected for someone of their stature, so someone of the same height, essentially. And a person is obese if they weigh a lot more than expected. To be more specific, body mass index, or BMI, is used to classify people into 4 subclasses, those being underweight, normal, overweight, and obese. BMI is commonly used because it is very easy to measure and also correlates strongly with the percentage of body fat. Typically, body fat levels are higher as BMI increases. People classified as overweight have an increased risk of disease and death, and those who are obese have the highest risk of developing a number of diseases. To calculate your BMI, divide weight in pounds by height in inches squared and multiply by a conversion factor of 703. We did not do it this way when we've done BMI before in class, or when we've talked about BMI before in class. The other way is to calculate it by dividing your weight in kilograms. And remember, in order to get to kilograms, you take your weight in pounds and divide by 2.2. So you would take your weight in kilograms divided by your height in meters squared. One thing to keep in mind is that BMI does not distinguish between simply having a higher weight than expected and having excess fat. For example, because muscle is much denser than fat, a very muscular male athlete with low body fat could have a BMI that classifies him as overweight or obese. So his would be higher than expected, his weight would be higher than expected, or his BMI, I should say, would be, and weight would be higher than expected for his height, but he would not be over fat and thus not at a higher risk for a disease based on body composition. So again, we've talked a little bit about that in class before about, especially people whose genetic makeup just has them shorter, but maybe pretty stout, muscular, and so that's going to put them higher up as far as BMI goes, even though their body fat distribution is not reflective of that BMI. Body fat distribution is also a predictor of health risk associated with obesity. Accumulation of fat around the abdominal area, which is referred to as the apple-shaped physique. And we've also talked about android or gynoid. So the term for this would be android. This is where the individual carries the weight a little bit higher up than those who carry weight lower down, closer to the hips, and that would be a gynoid body shape. And that android body shape does definitely have higher health risk concerns. Waist circumference is a good way to look more closely at abdominal obesity. In a standing position, you would place a tape measure horizontally near your belly button, just above your hip bones, as shown there in the picture. And make sure that the tape is snug and not compressing the skin. And then you take the measurement once you have comfortably exhaled. Waist measurements of more than 35 inches for women and more than 39 inches for men classify people as being at an increased risk for developing disease. So this is something that you could easily do at home if you have not done it before. I highly recommend doing that. In general, your genetics create the starting points and boundaries that shape how fat or muscular you are likely to become. Genetics play a role in determining a person's height, weight, body fat distribution, and metabolism. And research studies have demonstrated that twins raised apart still tend to have similar patterns of body fat distribution in spite of different environmental influences. Genetics may contribute 50 to 90% of a person's body weight. This means that somewhere between 10 and 50% of one's body weight is a result of environmental factors and lifestyle choices. Other aspects of body type are also genetic, such as short and stout or tall and thin. This is important to remember because some people may not be able to achieve a desired body shape no matter how hard they train or how diligent they are about food choices. And this brings to light two topics for discussion. The first is the thrifty gene. And the thrifty gene notion proposes that humans slow their metabolism and store more body fat in times of food scarcity. And this probably was a very important survival mechanism years ago in times of famine, but it's not so desirable when one is restricting food consumption voluntarily to lower their weight. The second is set point theory. And this theory proposes that the brain, hormones, and enzymes all work in unison to regulate body weight as a genetically predetermined level. And any attempt to change your body weight from this set point initiates a series of body responses that ultimately result in a return to that genetically predetermined weight. These body responses may include becoming more efficient at storing fat or controlling metabolism, hunger, or feelings of fullness through the action of various hormones. And I see a lot of people who are trying to lose weight who kind of get to this set point, or maybe are experiencing this set point theory. And this is when it becomes really hard to kind of break that barrier, break that threshold, and go beyond to lose additional weight. We know that the environment plays a vital role in determining body weight, and although genetic factors may limit what you can accomplish, healthy behaviors and choices such as choosing the correct foods and portion sizes, getting sufficient quantity and quality of exercise, and learning behavior modification techniques certainly can help reach the genetic potential. This term energy balance is really important for the overarching picture of trying to maintain weight, lose weight, or in some cases gain weight. There are three possible states of energy balance. Positive energy balance means that a person is consuming more calories than expended, resulting in weight gain. A negative energy balance occurs when more calories are being expended than consumed, which would ultimately result in weight loss. And neutral energy balance occurs when the calories being expended is equal to the calories being consumed. Energy balance is meaningful when it is measured over a long period of time. So being out of energy balance for one day here or there is not probably going to have an impact on body weight. So if you you eat your Thanksgiving dinner and more than that on Thanksgiving, and you have 3 or 4 desserts, etc., but you're doing that one day here or there. Let's say you have a similar day like that, where you're just eating nonstop, eating whatever you want, not really taking into consideration, making healthy choices. You're doing that one day out of 2 weeks, let's say, or out of 3 weeks. It's not going to have a big impact on weight gain. But being out of energy balance for several weeks or months, that's when we see significant weight gain or loss. And these scales are representative of the 3 possible energy states resulting in either weight loss, weight gain, and weight maintenance. So we can just see there the differences in if we need negative energy balance to lose weight, we obviously need to be expending more calories than we are ingesting. Factors that influence food intake include cultural, rituals, childhood experiences, educational and socioeconomic status. It's interesting, but there's a lot of research that people who have more education and have higher socioeconomic status choose to make better choices with regards to food, as well as tend to be more engaged physically, being involved in physical activity. Nutrition knowledge, convenience in food, flavor, texture, and appearance, all those things kind of go into why we choose to eat the way that we do. And I definitely think that, again, if you compare Lewiston to New York, ironically, we're probably eating overall healthier than maybe those who are in New York, just because of the sheer amount of, like for example, the sheer amount of bodegas that are available in such small range. And so that's kind of the easy place to pop into and get food. But the problem with that is that most of the food that they have is all processed. And so just having access to grocery stores, large grocery stores that have fresh produce, and being able to get those things back to your home so you have them on hand for preparing meals, etc., instead of choosing to eat out. Those are all really important things, and they kind of give us a in-depth look at how cultures might vary. So this is something that everyone should be familiar with at this point. The total energy expenditure is determined by calories burned at rest, so that's the BMR or the RMR. And this is going to be the largest component, accounting for 60 to 70% of the calories burned. And then calories expended during volunteer exercise is going to account for about 15 to 30%. And calories expended during digestion, absorption, and storage of food after eating represents about 5 to 10%. You see, so there's three major components that contribute to total energy expenditure are your resting metabolic rate, or BMR, the calories expended during voluntary exercise, that's also referred to as the thermic effect of physical activity, or the thermic effect of exercise. And then the third one is the calories expended during the digestion, absorption, all that. And that is usually referred to the thermic effect of food. Essentially, the more you there is, the greater your RMR is going to be. And it's not surprising then that RMR is highly related to body mass, particularly the amount of muscle that you have. The thermic effect of activity represents any movement your body performs above resting level, and that includes things like fidgeting, doing chores, and participating in formal exercise. And the thermic effect of food is not something, unfortunately, that we can really control to any significant extent for the purpose of weight management. Some diets claim that you can increase the thermic effect of food by exploiting the fact that more energy is required to digest and metabolize carbohydrates and proteins than fats, but the total number of extra calories burned using these techniques is not very high and probably not worth the effort. Since there are about 3,500 calories in a pound of body fat, the body must achieve a negative energy balance of 3,500 calories. So for example, to lose 1 pound, an energy deficit of 500 calories per day is needed if we are looking at a week-long span. So 3,500 calories divided by 7 days, we're looking at trying to burn about 500 additional calories, or have that negative energy deficit of 500 calories per day to reach a total of 3,500 calories, or 1 pound. In the first week of school, I believe we did a worksheet in class which asked you to estimate your total calorie needs based on your estimated total energy expenditure, or TEE. So while there's sophisticated laboratory methods to estimate this, it's not really a practical option for the majority of people. And one simple way to estimate how many calories you need to maintain current body weight is displayed in this table, which is table 18.2. Simply find the column that best fits your activity level, and you can see the estimated calorie requirements based on age and sex. It's important to remember that this is typically when people overestimate their activity levels. Thus, they ingest more calories, and then reaching a 3,500 calorie deficit is not an easy thing to do because their estimations are all off. And I distinctly remember talking to you guys about that in class when you were working on that. I said, really tried hard not to overestimate the number of calories you're expending, especially if you are trying to lose weight. The most successful, we'll refer to them as fat losers, are the ones who shed body fat and keep it off over the long haul. Many experience short-term weight loss only to see it return in a few short months, and this is usually subsequent to returning to their old habits. So they do a quick diet, they drop a lot of weight within the first month, maybe the first month or two, and then they like it, they feel good, but depending on how much money they are spending to do that diet, whatever the supplements are or the meal plans are, it's often happens that they return to their old habits. So it's a short-term fix, not a long-term change. Many want to lose that weight as fast as possible, but that doesn't always yield those long-term behavior changes and is likely going to set them up to return to that old weight. It's also important to inform people that they do not have to get their weight loss goal as fast as they can. That's what we like though, right? We like quick. We want the change now. As noted in other discussions, losing as little as 10% of body weight can be beneficial to health. Once a person has hit this goal, they should try to maintain the weight loss for 3 to 6 months before deciding whether an additional 5 to 10% weight loss is warranted. While 10% is not a magic number, the general idea is that once a person has maintained a modest weight loss for a lengthy period of time, they have likely made permanent lifestyle changes that will support their new lower weight and allow them to attempt further weight loss without overwhelming their resolve. The higher a person's BMI, the greater amount of weight they may lose per week. So for instance, if someone has a BMI of 27 to 35, it's reasonable that they could lose 0.5 to 1 pounds per week. That's reasonable, it's appropriate, it's a good goal. While those with a BMI greater than 35 may lose up to 1 to 2 pounds per week. So just noting what an appropriate amount of weight to lose per week is important. Nutrition is an important part of the equation when one is managing weight. The foods and beverages consumed determine the calories added to the body each day and thus impact the energy balance. When we look at carbohydrates, we know their primary function is to fuel body activities. This is the simplest form of carbohydrate found in the body is glucose. And glucose is the sole fuel for the brain and the central nervous system, so it is critical in the diet. It essentially has 3 fates in the body. 1, it powers cellular activity. 2, it is stored in the muscles and liver in a different form of carbohydrate called glycogen. And 3, it is converted to fat and stored in adipose tissue throughout the body. Although there are 3 fates that could occur and may occur all simultaneously, the third tends to predominate only when carbohydrate ingestion exceeds the body's energy needs. Therefore, it is definitely possible to gain fat tissue by overconsuming carbohydrates. If you recall on the diabetes chapter, we discussed the role of insulin and the impact on the system if insulin is constantly being secreted by the pancreas. A diet high in carbohydrate that exceeds energy needs creates an environment in which insulin-facilitated fat storage is prominent. Thus, it is recommended that a person consume 45 to 60% of total caloric needs from carbohydrates, and one should consider their activity level when determining which percent is appropriate for them. So those who are less active, probably going to steer nearer to the 45% range. Those who are more active, especially those who are engaged in long bouts of exercise, long endurance type activities, needs to consume closer to that 65% of carbohydrate intake. We have learned previously in this class that carbohydrate and fat supply the body with virtually all the fuel it needs, thereby sparing protein for its other important functions. Protein contributes significantly as a fuel source only when blood glucose drops to very low levels, such as during the late stages of very long duration exercise. It is recommended to consume 10 to 15% of total caloric intake from protein. Similar to carbohydrates, fat provides the body with fuel. When fat is consumed, it has 3 metabolic roles. 1, it is used to power the body's activities. 2, it is stored in adipose tissue as body fat. And 3, it is converted to an entirely different form called ketones, which some cells can use in place of glucose. The first 2 roles are the most common, while the third tends to occur only when the dietary carbohydrate is too low and blood glucose levels fall below normal levels. It is imperative that you avoid fad diets. Just putting it out there. Many of the diets marketed are gimmicks without any credible scientific research to support the claims, and no single macronutrient distribution works best for the body. So if you have a plan that eliminates or severely limits one of the macronutrients, it's probably a fad diet that will likely fail in the long term. For example, some popular diets on the market advocate eating only foods that have a low glycemic index, which is basically a measure of the extent to which a food causes the blood glucose levels to rise. As the body senses increases in blood glucose, that insulin is released. The diet is based on the idea that insulin promotes fat storage. So, eating only low glycemic index foods will minimize insulin's effect. This sounds reasonable, except that it doesn't necessarily work. The oversimplified explanation of insulin's action gets ignored, or ignores many of the aspects of the process, including the effect that consuming various combinations of foods has on the glycemic index, and also whether or not a person is in positive or negative energy balance. Some things to look for in a sound weight management plan include promotion of reasonable weight loss, recognition of reduced or controlled energy intake as part of a regular mindset. It's a key word there, mindset. It's a change in mindset. Promotion of regular physical activity, incorporation of behavior management, acknowledgement of the need for lifelong changes to maintain healthy weight, promotion of all aspects of health, and inclusion of advice from qualified nutritional professionals such as registered dietitians. So several terms, several words in there that are pointing to kind of the mental aspect of how to lose weight and how to adopt these healthy habits. Some other important aspects of the healthy approach to weight loss include setting realistic goals and paying attention to portions. And portion sizes is kind of it's a training. It's something that we all have to kind of work on, to be trained on, to know because that even though our plates have a ginormous diameter, they are not meant to be filled up. If we look at older people who have china from years and years ago, most of that china is smaller than what we're seeing today. Most of the dishes, their dinner dishes are a lot smaller than what the dinner dishes look like today. So everything is kind of just grown. And so if the plate gets better, we automatically assume we need to fill the plate. But that's not true, and it's not representative of an appropriate portion or appropriate portion sizes for all the food groups. And I think that setting realistic goals is also important. That doesn't mean I'm to set a goal of losing 5 pounds in 1 week. It means, because again, that's kind of looking at the short term, but what type of goals can we set that is really going to help propel that lifelong change, and so that we have that change in our mindset and just slowly adjust to a new way of living that reflects those healthy habits. More recent research is indicating that more physical activity than previously thought might be required to modify body weight. People desiring to simply prevent weight gain over the long term should engage in moderate intensity physical activity, roughly 150 minutes to 250 minutes per week. And that's what we've been talking about basically all semester, that goal of about 150 minutes. And that's a kind of a maintenance goal, right? This is equal to about 1,200 to 2,000 calories per week. Remember, we talked about the goal of trying to burn at least 1,000 to 1,200 calories per week just through exercise. This means exercising for about 30 to 50 minutes, 5 days per week, and burning 240 to 400 calories each session. Regarding the goal of losing weight, a dose-response relationship exists between the quantity of exercise and the amount of weight loss exhibited. We've heard that before, that dose-response relationship, meaning the more you dose, right, the more of a reaction you're going to see, or the more of an effect you're going to have. Again, I think I used the example of caffeine, right? The more caffeine you have, the more you're going to wake up, the more you're going to start to get the shakes. And so it's that dosing. So if we want to lose more weight, we have to dose more, meaning we have to have more exercise. We have to prescribe more to burn more calories to get to that negative energy balance, get that deficit so that we can drop the pounds. The more exercise the person does and at a higher intensity, the greater the weight loss. So if you can complete the exercise at a higher intensity, that's even better. It means that you don't have to work out for as long period of time because you're still going to reach the goal of the number of calories that should be expended during the exercise session. Realistically, those looking to lose weight should be engaged in physical activity from anywhere from 225 to 420 minutes per week. This would then equate to about 1,800 to 3,300 plus calories per week and burning 360 to 720 calories each session. Be careful not to consume too few calories, which makes it difficult to take in sufficient vitamins and minerals and does not give you the energy you need to fuel exercise. It may lower your metabolic rate. Generally, you should never consume fewer calories than required to fuel your resting metabolic rate. While engaging in resistance training burns far fewer calories than aerobic exercise, it does increase skeletal muscle, which would then contribute to your resting metabolic rate, which means you're burning or expending more calories overall throughout the day. Additionally, flexibility training and neuromotor exercise have more to do with daily functioning than with weight management in this case. They're not things that are going to burn a lot of calories, except for instance, let's say you're doing hot yoga, right? We're going to burn a little bit more calories doing hot yoga from that perspective. It is really recommended that a person evaluate any weight loss plan or supplement and use common sense before implementing a program. If a diet seems too good to be true, it probably is and will not yield long-term success. A program that includes only weight loss but mentions nothing about sustainability is probably one a person should avoid. A dietary supplement, something many choose to take, is defined by the FDA as a product added to the total diet that contains at least one of the following. It may contain a vitamin, mineral, amino acid, herb, botanical, or concentrate, metabolite, constituent, or extract. Dietary supplements are regulated by the FDA and are considered foods, but are considered foods, not food additives or drugs. This means that the tests for the efficacy and public safety are not as extensive as they are for food additives and drugs. Additionally, supplements need not be approved before they are placed on the market for sale. So be wary of those supplements whose labels read, "This statement has not been evaluated by the FDA. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease," as this claim indicates that it has not been investigated and approved by the FDA. Even without an exhaustive review of all the supplements on the market, it is pretty clear that no currently existing supplement definitively produces significant weight loss and long-term safe weight maintenance. And that's kind of what the problem is that many of these things that are going on the market, they haven't been on the market long enough, nor there has not been enough research in the time being to have an overall idea of what that supplement or weight loss item could do physically, physiologically, long term. So there hasn't really been longitudinal studies on it for people to make recommendations as to whether or not it is a good product. Yes, you're going to see those results that you want, and it's still safe. Some of those questions are unanswered. The rest of this PowerPoint actually goes into kind of specifically talking about body composition, which your textbook does not do. So I'm not going to record this portion. When you go to look at the PowerPoint that is already up via course documents, I recommend that you glance through it. There is some interesting information. I did touch briefly on eating disorders and disordered eating. But again, it's not something that your textbook goes into, and so it's not something I'm going to test you on. Just some interesting information, though, that I recommend you take a glance at if you have a chance. All right, so this kind of wraps up the discussion for Chapter 18, which is weight management. And I will be in touch with you. Have a great day. Thank you.